So I will talk about extreme vocalization in songbirds. And the Mediterranean flycatcher is a kind of bird like other old world flycatchers and do have several types of songs. So I think I will need a brief introduction on these vocalizations. I work in Office Français de la Biodiversité in Paris, France. So several kinds of vocalizations have been described in songbirds, including the following: territorial songs that are meant to carry as far as possible. Alarm calls, also meant to carry some distance. And vocalizations with a more intimate purpose, such as sad songs. And in the case of the flycatchers, some nuptial songs also. Now, a few words about the nightingale. I know that one Italian researcher, Brizio, he has demonstrated the presence of ultrasonic components in the songs of nightingales. However, this applies only to high frequency harmonics, the fundamental frequencies being well inside human hearing range. So now for the rest of my talk, I will not consider such sounds, these harmonics, but only the fundamental frequencies. Well, I will describe a few cases of extreme vocalizations in songbirds. As a general rule, most birds' vocalizations remain well below 10 kilohertz. Among songbirds reaching high frequencies, I can propose a classification test introducing the categories above, further divided according to the regularity with which high frequency sounds are emitted. So on the one hand, we have songs remarkable for the narrow frequency range, such as the black-polled warbler in North America. Incidentally, these kind of birds can be used as hearing tests in the field for people, because at normal speed, the black-polled warbler can be difficult to hear for some people. Sometimes I would propose it also at high speed. In Europe, we do have also some birds with very high frequencies and narrow range, like the firecrest. But it's a little lower, however. On the other hand, we have songs covering a wide frequency range, and which occasionally will reach high notes, such as the brown-headed cowbird in North America, reaching up to 10 or sometimes for some individuals even 13 kilohertz, rising at the end of the phrase. Slower now. In Europe, we do have some birds with very wide frequency ranges, such as two species of Western Europe starlings, maybe, the spotless starling and the common starling. So back to the flycatchers, vocalizations of the old world flycatchers. Using these categories, I will try to discuss the song of the spotted flycatcher and the song of its sister species, the Mediterranean flycatcher, Muscicapa tyrannica, which I had the opportunity to study in Corsica and in the Balearic Islands. The Muscicapa tyrannica is recognized by some authorities, while others still treat these birds as subspecies of the nominate of the strata. These are pictures I took on the left. It's in Seine-et-Marne, France, and continental Europe. and on the right, it's in Corsica. You can find this bird very easily in the villages along the coast or sometimes in the mountains. It's very common in Corsica. While in continental Europe, this bird is declining a lot. It doesn't seem to decline so much in Corsica. It's very different. It doesn't migrate to the same places in Africa, maybe, and well. When you treat this bird as subspecies, you can consider 3 different forms of spotted flycatcher Muscicapa striata in Western Europe. You have striata in continental Europe, and you have Tyrannica in Corsica and in Sardinia, and also in smaller islands in Italy. You have Balearica in the Balearic Islands. The yellow range is an area where Tyrannica could be present too, but further research is needed. This figure is taken from Vigano and Corso, 2 Italian researchers. We've worked a lot on all aspects of these birds, including genetics and so on. And of course, acoustics. I studied myself. I didn't know their work at the time, but I studied the birds in Corsica, and conclusions seem similar to them. So now back to the spotted flycatcher on the continent. So we have 2 different types of songs, and also the contact call and alarm call. This is a contact call. See, when you have tech, it's a more alarm call. I will not play it, but then you have the territorial song on a slow tempo with a narrow frequency range and not much variation. Rather high, but not exceptional. Sometimes the song is faster and more with a wider range, and not so easy to listen because it may be faint sounds. It's mostly for the female is when the nuptial song near the nest or so on. Now, in the islands of Corsica, I recorded this. The alarm call seems to be identical, the contact call also. The territorial songs looks different, but when you hear it, it depends on your hearing abilities, but maybe you don't hear the difference with the continental bird. I will play it again, maybe very high. It's difficult to hear. I don't know how many people can actually listen to the song rising. You have to listen to it at slow speed. Even slower now. Well, this territorial song is maybe identical to the human ear for all people, but there is something added at the end. It's like a high frequency signature, which can vary depending on the individual, and rising or falling abruptly. It's happening in a very short time, and it's one more difficulty to really know what's going on. Nuptial songs on the lower sonogram is very, very different from the nominate striata, with many notes falling abruptly and spanning 1 octave sometimes. These nuptial songs on a slow tempo have been described by Italian researcher Vigano as electrical sounds, referring to what can be heard below power lines. So now to summarize what is known about the frequencies of the spotted flycatcher on the continent and also in Corsica or Sardinia. Well, the spotted flycatchers can go up or 10 or 11 kilohertz, while Mediterranean flycatcher can go up to 18 or beyond, sometimes close to 20 kilohertz. Now, on other islands, in Mallorca and other Balearic islands, you have the subspecies Balearica, which has not been much studied, but as far as we can tell now, it's somewhere in between, intermediate, up to 13 or sometimes close to 14 kilohertz, with a kind of signature too on the territorial song and intermediate kind of nuptial song. Flycatchers are so able to produce very special sounds. On the continent, it's not so exceptional by the high frequency, but they can produce, they can elaborate two sounds at the same time if you want. What is most amazing, of course, is these high frequency sounds in the Mediterranean forms of flycatcher. In this particular case, you have a bird singing at a fast tempo. This is with a female near the nest. And then it goes to a slower tempo and back to territorial song. So I was asking the question with a question mark, a world record, maybe, I don't know. This discovery is at least one in terms of possible record, in terms of use of high frequency by a songbird. It proves to be the highest frequency ever documented for a bird song in the Western Palearctic. But maybe some other high frequency birds wait to be discovered elsewhere on other continents or in other islands. There may be something interesting about island evolution. And I was interested this morning to hear about Hawaii and the way some bird species vocalize at higher frequencies there than compared to Costa Rica. A few years ago, I fell upon a page on the internet asking the question exactly which birds have the highest frequency. And I was interested because it seemed to talk about Mediterranean flycatcher, which took so many years to find out because maybe people were interested in it before. People used to think the bird was fairly silent, but no, it wasn't silent. Well, this answer you can read. So
okay, just 1 minute left, please.
I think it's the last slide. Anyway, I was interested in telling you that birds, as a general, on global view, birds all around the world and through all the taxonomic spectrum of birds species, you can have all the whole human range, hearing range too. It can be with the champion at the time, which seems to be the Mediterranean flycatcher on the upper end, and then on the low end, cassowaries in Australia, which seem to go very close to the infrasound. Yes, it's been recorded at 23 or 24 hertz. I think it's the last slide, yes. No, there was one more. Now, just to thank some fellow researchers and ethologists from France and from Italy. And then a list of the reference. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Jacques.
Any question?
Thank you, Jacques, for your presentation. It is interesting to see how animals can use frequencies we can't hear. And this is an important problem to consider when studying soundscapes. Also interesting to see the variations, the geographic variations that may pose other problems when trying to recognize and decode complex soundscapes. So I'd like to invite attending people, the panelists and other people to present their questions. Hi, Jérôme. You can.
Hello. Can
show you?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, please go.
Okay, so just a quick question, Jacques. Do we have any information about the other side of the communication, about the audition of these birds? Do we have any idea about their frequency?
Bird capabilities were supposed to be not so good as to go to 20 kilohertz. So it would be surprising that they use these frequencies, but now they are probably able to go beyond. But I don't know. These physiologists should work on this, I guess.
Thank you.
We often note that the sound emitted by any individual species has to match the hearing range, but it is also interesting to see and to study if there are mismatches or not. In many cases, we also see that hearing is more extended than the frequency range used for sound production, just because there is also the need to hear the sounds or ultrasounds or infrasounds of the environment. So it is important to join together studies about hearing and about sound production. So thank you for pointing out this type of vocalizations. So